Did you know that Wikisana is the largest search engine for holistic medicine?
Dear viewers, I would like to extend a warm welcome to you for today's visit. Thank you very much for your numerous letters again this week. Nevertheless, I am very concerned about a situation or a fact that I would like to discuss with you. It is about the question of whether breast implants are actually safe. Yes, the whole topic is I would say in the years before, a very stubbornly treated topic, and we are facing a fact that makes me more than thought-provoking. How far does an explanation have to come here? And quite present, it is simply a patient who had breast implants, silicone implants, and only years later then had incredible rheumatic joint complaints, had depression again and again, and an incredible exhaustion. That means, of course, everyone has tried again and again as best as possible to put a certain symptomatic treatment on the table. But the whole story went on for more than 15 to 20 years, and before that, of course, the breast implantation. This process simply shook me awake a bit, and then I went on to the specialist who developed the good and incredibly high-quality website, Ms. Schaefer's, namely crank-brustimplantate.com. And here, in a very large summary, the whole thing is incredibly high-quality research over the years, and all those affected actually find answers to the questions they should or should have now, I think, before they even think about implanting a silicone breast implant. There is a colleague, Henrik Degman, who actually already formulated this message very, very clearly, that for 24 hours, breast implants, if they are used, actually start with the high tensile potential in there with the body heat, but also, of course, with friction processes. Licking, we say in medicine, they bleed. Of course, they don't bleed, but they give off this material to the body. And with that, even with an intact silicone breast implant, the worry is justified. Is that a process? I have to know it, and I have to have explained responsibly at the beginning, and not, as it still is today, that we actually don't give this explanation in detail. What plastic surgeons are doing today is that they don't use these textured breast implants, which actually have a very rough surface. There is a very hard, crystal clear study that shows that lymphoma occurs as a result. Lymphoma is lymphoid cancer, a form of lymphoid cancer. And that means that today, of course, at the moment, certain things could be that perhaps these textured breast implants are no longer produced. But in the end, they have many women, and the number of the affected is increasing. And that's why it's so important to me to be able to convey a little bit of background knowledge to you. Because, of course, it is implanted in era without end. And what bothers me about the fact, of course, is that today people actually do not yet consider the seriousness of the whole thing, and perhaps would not even decide for a breast implant. Or the fact, of course, that you also have to pay close attention to impact and pressure, because, of course, they also have a high sensitivity in the form of the material. And above all, never a mammography. Here, too, there are, of course, harmless pressure components, which also simply overload the tension of the material. Where we actually see that the knowledge of women about the danger of these breast implants must be so strong that they actually consider these breast implants again in advance. Or whoever has such a breast implant, silicone implant, should know that this gallate-like mass, this silicone, it is made of silica, but it has to be transferred into a gallate form. And for this you need platinum. You all know platinum. This is, of course, a metal which is also often used in gold plating. But this platinum is also responsible, of course, for the high toxicity of our body. And the lymphatic system has a purification filter system in itself. That is, when this platinum transfers into the human organism, then there is a litany of disorders. It also has a high affinity for tissue. In salpeter and hydrochloric acid, platinum is very reactive. It then binds to the nerve ends. And these nerve ends are, of course, responsible for passing information on to the level. That is, women sometimes have such a strange nervous twitch. They don't know. They have a disturbed perception. It can go up to hearing and sight problems. And these are, of course, things that you have to know. Now, on the one hand, I often say, well, I have a breast silicone implant. I don't have the feeling that one side is getting smaller than the other because it might be leaking. I don't have the feeling that one side is getting firmer. That's how I feel about it. And yet, you should all know that whether there is any stress in the body, there are different possibilities. You can simply make a find here through a hair mineral analysis, but you can also do the proof through a multi-element analysis. And in this multi-element analysis, of course, it's not just about platinum and essential trace elements such as zinc, selenium, magnesium, cobalt, also to stabilize the own structures. The Q10 can be detected. And all these things, also heavy metals, mercury, aluminum as a light metal, can be detected in BioVis or in the IMD laboratory from the whole blood. And in that respect, of course, I would absolutely want to know that as a woman. Nowadays, we have a cellular system. And we're talking about increased nitro stress here when it comes to changing the nitric oxide formation of the body and thus changing the energy function in your cellulite, like in mitochondria. Then, of course, it's not just the platinum, but it's also the other metals. It's the herbicides, it's the pesticides, it's the solvents, it's the additives in the food, it's the toxic effects that actually accumulate with it. Platinum, as well as mercury, occupy valuable receptors in the cells. That means if the potassium receptor or the estrogen receptor are occupied by a metal, then an estrogen or a calcium cannot dock. That means these disturbed functions lead to dysregulation also in the immune balance. And so you can't ignore all these aggressors, even silent, quiet, unconscious aggressors. That means one is a breast implant, and the other are, of course, things you should look at. How is your detoxification? How is your glutathione S transferase? How well is your detoxification trace element metabolism set up? These are, of course, things that are incredibly important. And in order to be far-sighted or also to work and act prophylactically here, it is, of course, very important that you consider all of this in advance. And on the other hand, and so it was, for example, with a patient who, I would say, just came across this website to a very capable colleague who performed a complete explantation because the capsule shell has to be removed as well. And if a normal breast implant is simply removed, then there are often capsules that remain inside. And here, of course, it takes a very long time to remove it in a very orderly manner. And of course, it is also a financial question without playing it down. But on the one hand, you are, of course, in the context of a, let's say, cosmetic breast enlargement alone. On a medically indicated breast enlargement, you may have support through the health insurance, but in the context of the explantation, it stops very quickly. And these things then, of course, really need support, which then also makes it really clear in the report that these diseases have also been provoked by breast implants, such as lymphoma or actually chronic diseases by breast implants today, where we know that these things are involved. It is also important, perhaps, to say, if you are a carrier of an implant, that you pay attention. Of course, in a pregnancy, it is not at all possible to estimate what kind of stress is now transferred to the child. It is also not possible to estimate what kind of stress is transferred to the child through the breast milk. And the diseases of the children are a really big, also serious topic today. Many children get sick when they are still small. I don't understand why we don't question that. Why don't we look at mothers, look at pregnancy, look at these things too? And every doctor I trust has to be able to see that I am a carrier of a breast implant, and that the development of my disease can therefore also have a significant role here, that I may have to deal with my rheumatic disease here. I think these are all things that we should not underestimate today. Since I have been dealing with it more, I would never have thought how many thousands of women there are who get sick as a result of a breast implant. But what really scared me is that we can clearly say today that the implants, the breast implants, cannot stay 100% from the first moment on, due to the fact that this material is, of course, implanted, and that the material dissolves against pressure, heat, friction, and also physical secrets. I wanted to address this topic with you very individually today, and above all, to be aware of it. In advance, now go into the matter in a really detailed way. Can I change things there? What should I know, also within the framework of my research of my individual situation? I may not be sick yet, but I don't want to think about what I can do tomorrow to deal with these things well. And I have to draw your attention to the website krank-brustimplantate.com. You will find a high-quality study situation, thorough reports, and above all, the very big question of our children's health from mothers with breast implants, and also the large number of diseases that go in the direction of burnout and are treated here by a psychologist, here in the direction of an autoimmune disease, by endocrinologist, Hashimoto, whatever. Here, a rheumatic joint problem that weakens me so much in my immunity that due to a chronic inflammatory reaction of the body, I actually only have the chance to help myself in some way. And this feeling that you shouldn't be powerless in any way, and I don't want to work with the feeling of worry, I just want to open the eyes and take a little bit of blindness if you don't feel properly cared for in that direction, or if you also want to use an alternative or want to use a possibility, then you should turn to Ms. Sheffers or this association, which does this in a great selfless way, and which, of course, can also strengthen itself through donations and activities, and can help many, many more people through this human monitoring to really act in advance. It was important to me today to lay the aspect on it, of course. Yes, there is still a little bit of time left, and I wanted to give you a hint. We have a, shall I say, large increase in neurodegenerative diseases. I would like to classify dementia, DMS, Parkinson's, but also all mental illnesses such as depression or schizophrenia and manic. That means in the context of these diseases, my terms are completely underestimated. Apart from the fact that all of them also have a lot of causes, I just wanted to point out a possible trace element, and that is lithium. Depression used to be treated with lithium injections, and it was done in a very high dosage and thus offered a lot of side effects. Many other drugs are in use today, and lithium is completely out of the way that you can use lithium as a food supplement. And this lithium as a food supplement, I'm not even talking more than 5 milligrams, 10 milligrams, maybe 20 to 30 milligrams maximum. But lithium as a trace element is one of the most essential for neuroprotection. Neuroprotection means for the protection of the brain or also for the regeneration of the brain and nerves. And it seems so relaxing. Lithium also seems so antidepressant, but also so fear-solving. Lithium itself is actually more difficult to determine in blood. I sometimes have the indication through our heavy metal screen analysis over the hand, but also a hair mineral analysis can give indications in the organism of a lack of lithium. In this low dosage, so at 5 to 10 milligrams, it acts as a brain cell function supporter, i.e. neuroprotective. And lithium is essential for this process. It also brings the neurotransmitters. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter, noradrenaline. These are things that always guide the body in the transmission of its nerve information. It optimizes the serotonin level and thus also acts as a good antidepressant in mild to moderate depression. It also modulates dopamine. The whole topic of Parkinson's, we have worked on this incredibly often. And I don't want to get caught up in it now, but in the end, it works. And there is a big disturbance within the dopamine metabolism. But not in every case is dopamine too little because it is no longer produced, but sometimes it also has a lot to do with the decomposition process. It also regulates glutamate. Glutamate is a very fast neurotransmitter that is actually required in the context of energy transmission or nerve cells. We also need it for our learning ability, for our memory. But if there is a lot of glutamate, it lags behind. Then I also have memory disorder, neurological disorder, and it can ultimately slow down this decomposition. And it has a great influence on other brain receptors. For example, it modulates the MAO. The MAO is an enzyme, the monoamine oxidase, which also supports dopamine, noradrenaline, and serotonin. And it also suppresses lithium inflammatory processes, for example. Inflammatory processes, we do not even realize that a lot is due to an inflammation on the basis of the brain. Of course, this is the knowledge about the so-called intestinal cortex axis today. This is the knowledge about an open blood-brain barrier. And of course, these are processes that can be better regulated and calibrated. Without lithium, of course, not a constantly open blood-brain barrier closes. But it also changes the activity in the fat metabolism of the brain. And these things are also an important concern for me to explain to you. You can buy lithium in the low dosage as a so-called food supplement. And I think you do very well in testing things, perhaps also through a hair mineral analysis at the beginning, but then also integrating them a bit into your everyday life. Yes, in this sense, two small and yet big topics. Interesting for one, less so for the other, because he is not affected by it at all. But maybe the daughter, or the girlfriend, or someone. It is good to go through life consciously, to go with open eyes, and we feel the seriousness of many things that we just do in many ways only now. We now have the effects of the decades-long, really unrestricted antibiotics due to the great resistances. We now have the high parasitic loads due to the, sweets. They are distributed the gastrointestinal. We now have the many increases in neurodegenerative diseases due to an incredible number of environmental noxians, aggressors. And it is good for everyone to take from such programs only what is important to them, what is interesting to them, so that they can juggle well, safely through life, and that they have joy every day and remain in a healthy stability. I think that is 99% of our happiness based on this fact. And may it be so, may this program have contributed to it. I thank you very, very much for your attention today and whenever you want. Then I look forward to the entries at Visite at QS24.tv and stay with very kind thoughts. See you next week. Goodbye.